All right, guys. So Noah Samsen dropped another video. Maybe it'll be a banger. I think it's a majority in criticizing Destiny. It's called Genocide Denial Streamers. Obviously, this is about you know Israel and Hamas. Very complicated issue. I think at the end of the day, here's where we're at. There's both sides have very complicated history. At the end of the day, you have two very large groups of people, and they both need to be able to exist. And we have to come to a peaceful solution, probably a two-state solution. That's probably your only option. You can't push either side off the land. They have really nowhere to go. So support a two-state solution. Probably have some kind of country, other Arab country in the area mediate the situation. Obviously the US would be part of that too, but like maybe create some kind of a border that's monitored by an allied country or something along those lines. That's pretty much where we're at. The specifics, there's really nothing else that you can do. Neither side is really necessarily trying to come to a conclusion. I've seen both Netanyahu and the Hamas leader talk about how the only real path forward is the eradication of the other side. Kind of where it's how it is what it is. So let's see. Do I think a genocide's happening? No, I wouldn't. I personally wouldn't classify it as that. I think it's a horrific war, and there's a lot of people, especially children, that are being impacted by it. Would I consider it a genocide? Probably not. Because it's a war on both sides. Both sides are fighting each other. Neither side wants to relent. Neither side wants to change their minds or their perspectives, and it's kind of where we're at. So,
when Israel is killing Palestinians,
and I think that yeah, sorry.
At unprecedented rates at a time when Israel is bombing hospitals.
Oh yeah, and like the population overall in the past decade has gone up significantly. So.
Ambulances, refugee camps, deliberately targeting journalists and their entire families at a time when Israel has flattened most of Gaza, rendering it uninhabitable. There's a select group of individuals, we call them liberals, that aren't quite focused on that. They're more focused on making sure people don't call this genocide.
I think Israel's goal is to eliminate Hamas. I think they have the moral authority to do so.
I think that it's fine to criticize Destiny's sake. I think that's perfectly reasonable. But this idea that that's what he's focused on is silly. I don't think Destiny's focused on anything. I think he's focused on having the right conversation about the topic. I think when it comes to any internet topic, people will be very will pick a side, and they will fight too hard for their side in a way where they're not necessarily having the right conversation, and they are to different degrees pushing some form of misinformation. For their side, they're playing like some kind of apologia for both sides in some capacity, but I don't think Destiny is doing that, to be honest with you. But I don't think that he's interested in downplaying a genocide. I think he's interested in what the truth is. Is he insensitive? Absolutely, constantly, which is that's his shortcoming. We'll say I'm not offended by his sensitivity. I'm not a very sensitive person. I can understand why some people are. But I think it's dishonest to label it as something. It sounds like you're trying to make it seem like he's being devious. So, and he's been really heavily researching the situation, probably more than most people.
Fortunately, there's a high cost right now of civilian casualties. I'm not sure there's any way to avoid that at the moment. I'm not sure there's any way to avoid that at the moment. I'm not sure there's any way to avoid that at the moment. I'm not sure there's any way.
Yeah, I think he means he's not sure if there's any way to practically avoid that at the moment, based on all the factors and what's going on. I don't think because neither side is going to relent. Really, both sides have to take an L and take a compromise that's not going to make either of them particularly happy. That's what a compromise is. But yeah,
way to avoid that at the moment.
And you could avoid civilian casualties too. And I think there should be some kind of a ceasefire. But you could also avoid civilian casualties if Hamas stopped using their people as political pawns. I mean, they are dropping in information that says hey, you should leave. We're going to bomb this area, and people aren't leaving because Hamas won't let them. So, hold them to a high standard too. It's interesting that a lot of leftists in America, or in general, Westerners, they don't really criticize the inaction of Hamas in defending their own people, even though that's who's supposed to have more consideration of people not of their own. They're the ones that are supposed to care about their people more than anything else, and they're not letting people evacuate after they're getting bombed. They're hiding inside of underneath hospitals and apartment buildings, et cetera, so that they can weaponize this. So I mean, but also both sides have to agree to the ceasefire, not just one. NATO might be calling for a ceasefire from Israel, but that doesn't necessarily mean that Palestine is going to respond in kind, or Gaza is going to respond in kind, or Hamas, rather.
Not sure if there's any way to avoid that at the moment. No other fighting force in the world does what Israel does when it comes to warning people about imminent attacks.
This guy is... What's his name? Destiny, I think. Yeah, he's like some type of influencer, internet guy. He is one of the loudest of such liberals that really just don't like hearing the G word when we're talking about what Israel is doing right now. Destiny went on a Twitter storm the other day. We're going to read these tweets. We're going to see.
I don't know what the tweets are going to be, but I can guarantee you that this is what gets Destiny in trouble more than anything else, is that he's so calm, cool, and collected, well, especially in a conversation. He goons a little too hard when it's on his stream. But then on Twitter, he's just like an absolute animal. Like, some of the shit that you'll see from him on Twitter are just insane. So, of course, people are going to be like, yeah, this guy doesn't actually care. Because that's the thing. I think that everything that Destiny's saying about this is, like, true. I mean, I respect his opinion on it. But to somebody else who maybe doesn't know Destiny, or they don't understand that somebody can be edgy and also well-meaning at the same time, they're going to look at this and they're going to go, what the fuck is wrong with this guy? Like, this guy obviously does not care about Palestinian lives. I could see why people would feel that way. Right? And so that's kind of like, sometimes when you goon too close to the sun, you got to worry about that as well.
How he justifies this assertion, and yeah, that's today's video, and hope you enjoy. If Israel wanted to genocide Palestinians, then they would only exist in the history books.
There's probably a level of truth to that. I mean, Israel is significantly more powerful, so...
Okay, yeah, so we see what's going on there. So because Israel hasn't wiped all Palestinians off the face of the earth, then they have yet to commit a genocide. That's what's being expressed here, right?
No, that's not what's being expressed there. What he's saying is that if Israel actually wanted to commit a genocide, if they actually wanted to lean in and like kill everybody there, they could, because they have the weaponry and to do so. But they don't do that, and I think that they generally have a even if they don't care about Palestinian people, they're still showing, I would say, a reasonable amount of care for the lives of the civilians by warning them before they drop bombs. They delayed, their invasion in there in the first place. A lot of this because of pressure from Western forces, which is a good thing. But like, that's the argument. The argument isn't that like, oh, they love it. That, you know what I mean?
If you read the UN's definition of genocide, any of the following acts committed with intent to destroy, in whole or in part, a national, ethnic, racial, or religious group as such, killing members of the group, causing serious bodily or mental harm to members of the group, deliberately inflicting on the group conditions of life calculated to bring about its physical destruction, in whole or in part, imposing measures intended to prevent births within the group, forcibly transferring children of the group to another group. There's no requirement or stipulation for total annihilation. If that were the case,
again, this is like a war, so it's not like, I really would not consider this a genocide. They're in like within a war. And they're not trying to kill as many people as possible. They're bombing specific targets to try to eliminate Hamas, just to be clear. But okay.
A lot of genocides, most genocides would not meet the definition. A notable one being the Holocaust. Yeah. The logic in this tweet implies that because some Jews survived the Holocaust, the Nazis must not have wanted it that bad, because if they had, it would have succeeded.
I don't think so, man. I don't think... The Nazis weren't... Okay. Gotcha.
Anybody else sense that? There's Hitler particles emanating.
I'll watch the Middle Ground video. It'll trigger me. I can't watch the Middle Ground video because like Middle Ground always does some dumb shit.
Tweet. Journalist Mehdi Hassan responded to that last tweet from Destiny, writing, per this argument, China isn't guilty of genocide in Xinjiang because the Uyghurs still exist. Same with...
I mean, that's different because they're putting them in camps and there's no actual war going on with them. With Russia and Ukraine, Russia's an invading force into Ukraine. The issue in Israel and Palestine is so much more complicated. Yeah, absolutely. Israel takes every opportunity to grab as much land as they can after they're like attacked. There's definitely issues there, but I mean, it's a bit more complicated. And like, they're trying to take the land. They were given that land by the British in like 1948 or whatever. It's so much different. That was before we had more established boundaries and borders. Yeah.
With Russia in Ukraine. Destiny quote tweeted this, writing, China is guilty of genocide because they are intentionally trying to eliminate a group of people, and it shows. There is no evidence of Israel doing this to Palestinians today. No evidence. Just, there's nothing. It's like, oh.
Well, his argument is going to be that there's no evidence that they're trying to kill all the Palestinians. Really what it comes down to is they're trying to eliminate Hamas specifically. Not trying to specifically target these people. They're trying to target Hamas, and Hamas is using their people again as some kind of a shield. So
Shoot, okay. It feels weird. Everyone's like really up in arms about what's going on. Are they just making it up? Oh, hold on, hold the fort. I just found something on my computer. It's an 84-page document submitted to the International Court of Justice that outlines in detail with citations the plethora of evidence of Israel's genocidal actions and intent. Chat, is this real? Is this a thing? Just to preface, this document and application is pretty unprecedented. The ICJ is the UN's highest court. It's the world court, basically. And after hearing South Africa's case against Israel, they ended up ruling that Israel is plausibly committing genocide. They fell short of calling for a ceasefire, but they did order, with near unanimous approval, that Israel must halt any actions in Gaza that could constitute genocide, which, according to the ICJ, they are currently plausibly undertaking. There is no evidence that Israel has changed anything about their rhetoric or military strategy in the months since this ruling, so by the court's logic, the final verdict should be obvious, but unfortunately...
Well, if the court hasn't enforced anything, then it sounds like they might be complying with that. So
we likely won't see that conclusion for at least...
Yes, we're going to go to the gym tonight, baby.
at least another few years, because we live in hell. Okay, enough yapping. We're starting on page 30, section C. Genocidal acts committed against the Palestinian people. This section provides an overview of the acts in which Israel is engaged that are genocidal in character, having regard to their nature, scope, and context. These acts are ongoing in a conflict context, where Israel is deliberately imposing telecommunications blackouts on Gaza, restricting access by fact-finding bodies and international media. Section 1 outlines the actions defined as killing Palestinians in Gaza. It goes over the death toll, which is actually out of date. Currently, it's sitting at 28,000, not 21,000. The percentage of women and children killed, which is 70. The 15,000 people that are reported missing, probably dead under the rubble. Palestinians have been killed in their homes, in shelters, in hospitals, in schools, churches, mosques, literally just trying to find food and water for their families.
Yeah, it's a horrible thing, man. And I wish that Hamas cared about their own people as well.
Killed while evacuating, killed in the zones by which they're supposed to be evacuated to. And by evacuate, that means displaced. It means kicked out, homes destroyed, can't come back. Multiple instances of Israeli soldiers performing summary execution. One account was of at least 11 members of the Annan family and their relatives, boys and men, said to have been separated out by Israeli shoulders and shot in front of their family before the women and children would end.
If that's true, that's terrible. I don't know how accurate that is, but if it's true, like I wouldn't doubt it. Both sides are committing war crimes. I mean, it's a fucking horrific thing going on.
Attacked unarmed people, including Israeli hostages.
This whole thing started because like Hamas literally killed like 1,200 Israeli people for no fucking reason.
They're just being shot dead on sight despite posing no threat, even while waving white flags.
When News at 10 first broadcast pictures of a Palestinian man in a group carrying a white flag in Gaza who was shot dead, the Israeli military told us it was not aware of the incident. It then said we had edited the pictures.
They knocked down the front wall and entered the house. We were sitting down having lunch at the time. Then my brother Mohammed was shot. He was.
I hope that this video also shows like the Israelis, like Israeli people suffering as well, and like, talking about how like they were targeted and murdered as well, and those families. Because the problem is that every time like one side talks about this topic, they don't care about the other side. That's what it comes down to. I hope Noah gives us his solution to this topic, by the way.
At the front, waving a white flag.
For Palestinian children in particular, death is everywhere and nowhere is safe. A total of over 7,000.
You're right. I'm sure the whole thing didn't start in October 2023. Yes, you're right. It started a lot longer ago. You're right.
700.
Yes, that's the point. I understand that. But it's like a back and forth on both sides in general. And one thing I really am very skeptical of is why hasn't any Arab nation actually stepped in to take refugees or like help Gaza at all or Palestine at all? Like it's insane how little they care. Unfortunately, the times when they do take refugees in, from what I've seen, they will cause like significant, chaos and destruction to like the country that takes them in. Probably because some of the people in there are, Hamas militants that are just trying to steal resources to, fight the war more that they should. Again, time to move on from. But like, yeah, it's unfortunate.
129 Palestinian children have been killed in Gaza to date. The scale of Palestinian child killings in Gaza is such that United Nations chiefs have described it as a graveyard for children. Indeed, the unprecedented rate of Palestinian child casualties has prompted UNICEF spokesperson to call Israel's attacks on Gaza a war on children. Doctors, journalists, teachers, academics, and other professionals are also being killed at wholly unprecedented rates. To date, Israel has killed over 311 doctors, nurses, and other healthcare workers, including doctors and ambulance drivers killed on duty, 103 journalists, which is now closer to 120, amounting to over one per day, and over 73% of the total number of journalists and media workers killed globally in 2023, 40 civil defense workers responsible for helping to dig victims out of the rubble killed while on duty, and over 209 teachers and educational staff. 144 United Nations employees have also been killed, the highest number of aid workers killed in UN history in such a short time. In addition to being killed by Israeli weaponry, Palestinians in Gaza are also at immediate risk of death by starvation, dehydration, and disease as a result of the ongoing siege by Israel, the insufficient aid being allowed through to the Palestinian population, and the extreme difficulties in distributing such limited aid that is...
The problem is that when aid does get through, it needs to be heavily vetted because, like, look at how much of the money the leaders of Hamas are worth. They will consistently steal all the relief and aid that gets through. That's another problem. Again, they don't care about their own people. Like they'll constantly steal massive amounts of resources over and over again. Like, oh, there's aid coming through. Let's take the money. Let's take the food. Let's take the this, and we're going to use this to, cause more war instead of, that's another problem too. There's so many aspects. Again, Hamas, and I'm not saying Israel's perfect, and but like the Palestinian people have no ally. It's Israel and Hamas both are against them. Their own people that they elected are against them. It's a terrible thing.
Permitted to enter the territory due to the decimation of Gaza's infrastructure in Israel's military attacks. Israelis sitting in front of the aid trucks to block them from entering Gaza is also not helping. Surprise, surprise. Celebrating too. Laughing what happens. Absolutely fucking depraved.
Dozens of protesters have demonstrated outside a major Israeli seaport.
Yeah, again, probably because Hamas takes the resources, so they don't trust it's actually going to go to people.
Opposing the delivery of humanitarian aid.
Hey, we're going to...
And I would obviously expect both sides of this conflict to hate each other. Like, I imagine they just both hate each other. It's an unfortunate thing, but there's been such a conflict that started like almost 100 years ago. It's been going on for so long. Like, it's not even about like what's the history, what's the this, what's the that. At this point, it's just they're killing each other and they have no empathy for each other. That's why these things are happening. Like, go in there and ask anybody in Gaza what they think of any Israel. They want them all dead. Like, it's a fucked up scenario. That's why there needs to be some kind of like forced peace that goes on between them, and then hopefully time will heal that wound.
Take a break from this very upsetting material real quick to talk about today's quite relevant sponsor, Ground News.
Okay.
Seeing what's happening in Gaza play out on the news and on our social media.
Check out Ground News if you want, guys. Good plug. Gotcha, buddy.
Is about audio that no other news outlets are doing. So I encourage you to check them out. All right, now let's get back to the video. Section number 2, which is about bodily and mental harm to Palestinians in Gaza. Mind you, this is 2 of 8. And yeah, we're going to go through them all because I feel like I haven't seen that done in any like major Western media outlets or content. I'm sure it has been, but just in case, if you haven't seen it, we're doing it. 55,000 Palestinians have been wounded in Israel's military attacks since October 7th. The majority of them women and children. Burns and amputations are typical injuries. There's an estimated 1,000 children that have lost one or both legs. Reports of Israeli forces using
that only America can solve. No, America needs to be part of the conversation, but some like allied or some Arabic countries that are in good standing with Palestinians and Hamas, they need to step in too to mediate in some capacity.
White phosphorus in densely populated areas. Even small amounts of white phosphorus can cause deep and severe burns, penetrating through the bone and capable of reigniting after initial treatment. There are no functioning hospitals in the north of Gaza, soon to be none in the south as well. Of the 12 that existed, only 7 are operating.
Yeah, the ad does come off as a little bit jarring considering the tone of this video. Kind of feels like maybe there shouldn't have been an ad in this video at all. But then like, I'm going to monetize the video. I'm like, but I don't know. The ad did feel a little tasteless, but I'm not going to go into too much. People in the chat are just say that they felt it was tasteless. I get it.
Operational, such that injured persons are reduced to waiting to die, unable to seek surgery or medical treatment beyond first aid.
Oh, sounds like a Canadian healthcare system. Probably an inappropriate joke considering. Yeah, sorry.
Dying slow, agonizing deaths from their injuries or from resultant infections. The extreme levels of bombardment and lack of any safe areas are also causing severe mental trauma in the Palestinian population in Gaza. Even before the latest onslaught, Palestinians in Gaza suffered severe trauma from prior attacks. 80% of Palestinian children experienced higher levels of emotional distress, demonstrating bedwetting and reactive mutism, and engaging in self-harm and suicidal thoughts. 11 weeks of relentless bombardment, displacement, and loss will necessarily have led to a further increase in those figures, particularly for the estimated tens of thousands of Palestinian children who have lost at least one parent and those who are the sole surviving members of their families.
On the second floor, there's a 5-year-old boy who was hit by a grenade. A fragment passed through his eye and lodged in his brain.
Jesus.
But that's just part of Mumin's story. His brother and sister watched it all.
It was lunchtime. We were sitting down.
11-year-old Ahmed Hattab was in the kitchen when Israeli soldiers broke into the family home.
They raided our house and they shot our mum and dad.
Jesus
then
Christ.
They started shooting at us.
Why did they do that? Like, what was the motivation behind that? For their parents, I suspected, like, I don't know, they suspected to work with Hamas. Like, what the fuck is the context here? That's terrible. I mean, it's a terrible thing. I'm just curious.
His sister, Buthaina, is 9.
We went to another room, hiding from the soldiers. They started banging on the door, and then they blew it up.
Point 53 gives examples of actions taken to intentionally cause psychological distress, specifically with regards to education and how the system is being completely disrupted by the bombing.
Do you think that they're trying to cause psychological distress? Like, they obviously are causing psychological distress, don't get me wrong, but do you think that they're trying to cause psychological distress of, like, the people? Like, I don't know if that's true. That's a lot of, I don't know if I agree with that, but okay.
It's even worse in reality than it looks. It's the amount of suffering is just something incomparable. It's really unbearable. I'm speechless when I try and think of the future of these children. It's generations of children who will be handicapped, who will be traumatized. The very children in our mental health programs are telling us that they would rather die than continue living in Gaza now. Large numbers of Palestinian civilians, including children, have reportedly been arrested, blindfolded, forced to undress and remain outside in the cold weather before being forced onto onto trucks and taken to unknown locations. Medics and first responders in particular have been repeatedly detained by Israeli forces, with many being detained incommunicado at unknown locations. Videos published by
I wonder how many of these people that are being detained are like potentially Hamas militants. Like I wonder. I don't think that's an unreasonable question to ask.
Israeli media on Christmas Day appeared.
Thank you so much for the $2 from Poop in My Trousers. Very appropriate for this video. Papa, how do you become the ultimate goon master? Well, you know, as you can see, I'm wearing a Goon Squad shirt. It's very appropriate for this video topic. That's how you do it, brother. Just gotta ragoons. Okay, let's continue.
Here to show hundreds of Palestinians rounded up inside Al Yarmouk football stadium in Gaza City, including children, older people, and persons with disabilities being forced to strip to their underwear in degrading conditions. Many Palestinian detainees who have been released report having been subjected to torture and ill treatment, including the deprivation of food, water, shelter, and access to toilets. The United Nations Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs reports video footage showing bruises and burns on the bodies of detainees. Images of mutilated and burned corpses alongside videos of armed attacks by Israeli soldiers filed as exclusive content from the Gaza Strip are reportedly circulated in Israel via a social media Telegram channel called 72 Versions Uncensored.
This is a picture of Palestinians praying for those who have been killed by Israel. In the accompanying post, the dead are compared to, quote, a large shipment of fresh baked goods straight from the shawarma. A comment reads, quote, I asked for a medium rare, make a new one. And then there's this, a dead body is being pulled by a vehicle across the sand. Kudos to our warriors who, despite the war, keep the beaches clean from unnecessary trash.
It is estimated that over 1.9 million Palestinians out of Gaza's population of 2.2 million people, approximately 85% of the population, have been forced from their homes. There's nowhere safe for them to flee. Those who cannot leave or refuse.
Yeah, they should come to a solution, man. Again, like, those comments are horrific, but both of these sides hate each other so much that they want the other side dead. They have no empathy or sympathy for each other. Like, the situation has gotten so out of hand. Like, it's time that other countries step in and just like force mediation and force a solution. Again, like, does anybody watch this? Does Noah give a solution or a potential solution on what he would like to see, or does he continue to show as much empathy as he can for just Palestinian people and not Hamas, or excuse me, and not Israel, and like an attempt to just really consider or spark more like unproductive debate about the conversation? You know, Hamas rejected another ceasefire. Yeah, of course they're going to reject it. Not that Israel necessarily wants to ceasefire. Like, you know what I mean? It's like both sides are fucked up. That's why they have to be put in place where they cannot reject the ceasefire. That's the problem that we're at.
Used to be displaced have been killed or at extreme risk of being killed in their homes. Israel is repeatedly issuing evacuation orders demanding that Palestinian civilians in certain areas of Gaza leave their homes for other areas.
Yes, because that's the thing. You're framing that as if it's a negative. Like, yeah, they're trying to kill Hamas. And they're like, guys, you should leave. We're giving you a fair warning. And Hamas doesn't let them.
First such order, issued on the 13th of October in 2023, commanded that 1.1 million Palestinians living or otherwise present in the north of Gaza, including Gaza City, move to the south of Gaza within a 24-hour window. The International Committee of the Red Cross warned that the evacuation directive, impacting approximately 36% of Gaza's territory, combined with the complete siege of Gaza, was not compatible with international humanitarian law. The World Health Organization warned that it could be tantamount to a death sentence for hospital patients. The evacuation was, however, maintained and has been reissued on a number of occasions, including on the 28th of October 2023, ahead of the Israeli announcement of ground operations in northern Gaza, and again thereafter, shelling and bombardment along the evacuation routes and at the destinations of the evacuation routes, leaving quote-unquote evacuation maps that have no designated areas to which they need to evacuate.
We identified 208 of these craters in satellite imagery and drone footage, indicating 2,000-pound bombs posed a pervasive threat to civilians seeking safety across South Gaza.
Not to mention near total internet blackouts at the time, preventing most Gazans to even see these maps.
Well, they didn't just throw through internet. They dropped tons of pamphlets. They made individual phone calls. It was more than just pamphlets, and it was more than just internet access things. They did. It's like a downplay of like what's actually going on in the situation. Like, if you're going to like, I think it's perfectly fine if you're more on the side of Palestine. That's totally fine. But Jesus Christ.
Point number 4 is deprivation of access to adequate food and water to Palestinians in Gaza. It is now literally impossible to effectively deliver this humanitarian aid. The late December UN Security Council measures were bogus. They were not going to work. They were never going to work. The watered-down resolution fails to properly address the 4 elements identified by the United Nations Secretary General as necessary following effective aid capable of assisting Palestinians in Gaza. Shelves are empty, wallets are empty, stomachs are empty. There's just one bakery operating in the whole of Gaza. You may or maybe probably not have seen that statistic that 90% of the world's populations in extreme hunger and famine are located in Gaza right now. now. People in northern Gaza are eating grass to survive. They are drinking polluted water. The lack of water is severely impacting lactating women in particular, who, even if undertaking only a moderate amount of exercise, require a supply of 7.5 liters of water a day for drinking, sanitation, and hygiene to keep themselves and their babies healthy. Young mothers are unable to breastfeed for lack of proper nutrition as arising from the food scarcity. They've been forced to use contaminated water to prepare formula where it is even available, risking disease in vulnerable babies. In parallel, the chronic unviability of formula is also risking the lives of newborn babies who are already reportedly dying from avoidable causes due to the absence of medical care, food.
Yeah, it's a horrific war. What's your solution? That's what I care more about than anything else. I want to know what his solution is. I want to know if this video is means well or if it's meant to weaponize the struggles that are going on in Gaza. That's what I want to know.
Water, and adequate sanitation. The impacts of malnourishment on older children may also be particularly grave and long-lasting, preventing them from reaching their full potential in terms of physical growth, cognitive capacity, school performance, and productivity later in life. Experts are now predicting that more Palestinians in Gaza may die from starvation and disease than airstrikes, and yet Israel is intensifying its bombing campaign, precluding the effective delivery of humanitarian assistance to Palestinians. It is clear that Israel is, through its actions and policies in Gaza, deliberately inflicting on Palestinians conditions of life calculated to bring about their destruction.
Papa, if Russia told you to leave your house because they were going to bomb it, would you think that's okay? I think that these people want to leave their homes, but Hamas wants them to die because this is the problem, is like in these areas, it's not as simple as we just want to bomb your houses for fun. In these areas, the Hamas is intentionally hiding their military operations underneath people's houses, hospitals, apartments, etc., so that when they are rooted out, they get to go, look, you killed a bunch of our people, and they don't let their people leave. Like, part of the problem, too, is going to be, like, how easy is it for them to leave? Absolutely. But it's, like, so reductionist the way that you're looking at this. Like, Hamas has no value for their people's lives. That's just the reality. They're not just bombing people's houses for fun. Israel is attacking specific points where Hamas is hiding. And there's, like, a huge, like, what is it, like 200 miles or something? There's tons of underground infrastructure that Hamas uses to travel through the city. It's so, like, the way that you're looking at this is, like, so simplistic. But Hamas is, like, a very special demon. Like, that's what it is. Not Palestinian people. Palestinian people are people. But Hamas is a terrorist organization that's, like, completely hellbent and, like, completely fine with their people dying. Like, that's what it is. They have no value for their own people's lives. That's the problem that we're facing here. So it's not just like, hey, they're bombing for fun.
Point 5 concerns the deprivation of access to adequate shelter, clothes, hygiene, and sanitation to Palestinians in Gaza. More descriptions and examples here of just a lack of basic necessities. Clothes, bedding, blankets, critical non-food items. Point 6 is the deprivation of adequate medical assistance to Palestinians in Gaza. Almost above all else, Israel's military assault on Gaza has been an attack on Gaza's medical healthcare system, indispensable to the life and survival of the Palestinians in Gaza. Israel has declared an unrelenting war on the health system in Gaza, as observed by the United Nations Special Rapporteur on the right of everyone to the enjoyment of the highest attainable standard of physical and mental health. In a statement issued on the 7th of December in 2023, the United Nations expert noted that the healthcare infrastructure in the Gaza Strip has been completely obliterated and that we bear witness to a shameful war on healthcare workers. She warned that we are in the darkest time for right to health in our lifetimes and that we have descended into depths from which we must quickly emerge. Since early December 2023, Israeli attacks on Palestinian hospitals have only increased. The Israeli army has continued to attack and besiege hospitals and healthcare centers to deprive them of electricity and fuel, crucial to maintain effective functioning and equipment, to obstruct them from receiving medical supplies, food, and water, to force their evacuations and closure, and effectively to destroy them. The north of Gaza, without any functioning hospital for a week, has only 4 severely challenged, partially functioning hospitals available now. There have now been more than 238 attacks on healthcare in Gaza, in which over 61 hospitals and other healthcare facilities have been damaged or destroyed. Do you remember when everyone was arguing about who launched the rocket that killed 300 people at Al Ali Hospital? So much time and media coverage dedicated
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it wasn't Israel, so.
To something that is literally 1/50th of the damage and destruction wrought by Israel against Gaza's health.
Yeah, because that was important, because they wanted to make it seem like Israel was intentionally trying to attack like specific like civilian targets when they weren't trying to do that. When that rocket was very clearly a misfire. It's almost a fact at this point. If they wanted to change, if they wanted to prove it that it wasn't Israel, all they had to do is show the debris from the missile and allow them to test the soil and be like, oh, this isn't a missile that Israel typically use, but they hit it instead. So, like, yeah, of course that one's important.
Healthcare system. It was all a distraction meant to get the conversation shifted over from literally everything is being destroyed and everyone is being killed to we need the New York Times to develop a 3D diagram and diagnose exactly what happened here and argue about this for 3 weeks while every single day a hospital is being destroyed, bombed, or attacked.
So what's your solution? What's like a viable solution that you like? This is a problem. Noah doesn't care. Noah just wants to like shout like, dude, what's the solution? Where's your solution? I would have started. That's why I started with my solution. That's why I made sure to start with this video with like, this is what I think should happen. Like, I think that there needs to be, both sides obviously need to take a compromise. They both need to lose out on something. There needs to be a two-state solution with some kind of a mediate, like a whatever mediation in the middle from probably Western countries, United States, and Arabic countries. Possibly like have Arabic, other Arabic surrounding countries enforce some kind of a border, safe border in some capacity, right? Like I'm sitting here like, oh, we should. This is productive. This is what we need to do. No, what do you think? I mean, probably, honestly, even like some kind of reparations from Israel to Palestine after they gather their shit together. But like, what's your solution? Where are you at? Where are you at with the solution, man? Like, that's the problem. Maybe he'll say it later. I feel like that is very important to talk about, especially right up front. Because at least you know my intentions. Even if you disagree with me on some kind of specific, you still know that like I don't want Palestinian people to be dead. Like that's fucking insane. I want there to be a peaceful solution. Like that's what needs to happen. And like that's I think very important for people to talk about.
Or starved of resources. At least 570 Palestinians have been killed at hospitals and healthcare centers in Gaza, and further 746 have been injured. This includes patients and internally displaced Palestinians who vainly sought sanctuary on or near hospital grounds, killed by Israeli strikes or snipers. Palestinian mothers have been killed in maternity hospitals, and Palestinian children in children's hospitals. Even those tending to and counting the dead, like Saeed al-Shorbaji, director of Nasser's hospital mortuary, have themselves been killed. Some have even been victims of Israeli attacks multiple times over, like 12-year-old Dina Abu Massan, interviewed by UNICEF after losing her parents, 2 siblings, and her leg in an Israeli strike on her home. She was then killed herself when the Israeli army shelled the hospital where she was being treated. That shit, man. That shit. It is literally impossible to keep up and cover adequately the amount of destruction and murder that Israel is doing. It's impossible. And I don't know, man. I just don't know. Fucking Jesus Christ. Those wounded by Israel in Gaza are being deprived of life-saving medical care. Gaza's healthcare system, already crippled by years of blockade and prior attacks by Israel, is unable...
Yeah, and unfortunately the reason that they were blockaded is because they're constantly being attacked by Hamas. And then any aid that goes into that country is taken by Hamas, which is why it has to be so highly vetted. Like, I wish that you would bring those things up. Call out the atrocities of Israel, but, like, you're not calling out the atrocities of Palestine. Like, it's like, why? Or, excuse me, of Hamas. Like, why not? It's very interesting. It's not interesting. It's very obvious. But it's like, it's Jesus Christ.
To cope with the sheer scale of the injuries, now at 55,243 injured, including at least 8,663 children. There are reports of severely injured patients walking for miles trying to find help. UNICEF highlighted the case of a boy from the north whose leg had been blown off in the violence, who had spent 3 or 4 days trying to reach the south, delayed by checkpoints. The smell of decomposition was clear, and that boy had shrapnel all over. Potentially he was blind and had burns to 50% of his body. I was forced to do dressing changes on massive wounds, excruciatingly painful wounds. There was a girl with just her whole body covered in shrapnel. She was 9. I ended up having to change and clean these wounds with no anesthetic and no analgesic. I managed to find some intravenous paracetamol to give her. Her dad was crying, I was crying, and the poor child was screaming. Similarly to famine, the possibility of disease killing more Palestinians than the bombardments is approaching. The final point in this section of the document concerns the destruction of Palestinian life in Gaza. In November, 21 members of United Nations working groups warning of a genocide in the making in Gaza observed that the level of destruction that had been by then taking place of housing units as well as hospitals, schools, mosques, bakeries, water pipes, sewage, and electricity networks threatens to make the continuation of Palestinian life in Gaza impossible. As they note, Israel has in its bombing campaign against Gaza used powerful weaponry with inherently indiscriminate impacts, resulting in a colossal death toll and the destruction of life-sustaining infrastructure. Israel has destroyed not only individual homes, houses, and whole apartment blocks, it has destroyed entire streets and entire neighborhoods. Shujaiya, a suburb of Gaza City, once home to approximately 110,000 Palestinians, appears to be now a vast wasteland. Entirely flattened as far as the eye can see, its shops, schools, a vibrant marketplace, family homes, doctor clinics, historic streets, and in Uthman Mosque, and everything that once sustained Palestinian life there has been damaged or destroyed, along with so many of its people. Other areas in Gaza appear to have experienced a similar level of destruction, including Beit Hanun, Beit Lahia, Gaza Old City, Al-Ramal, and Nusayrat refugee camp in the south. Israel's targeted the Palace of Justice, the main Palestinian court building in Gaza, housing the Palestinian Supreme Court, as well as an archive of court records and other historical files. Israel has also significantly damaged the Palestinian Legislative Council complex. It has targeted Gaza City's central archive building, containing thousands of historical documents and national records dating back over 100 years, forming an essential archive of Palestinian history, as well as more modern...
Okay, is this going to be the rest of the another 20 minutes of this video? Is just going to be continuously like, hey, here's all the fucked up shit that Israel's doing. Not going to bring up like any of the blame that Hamas should take for not letting their people evacuate. And we're just going to keep doing, like, is that what this is? Is like just a jerk off session, and I'm just going to continuously read like a Newsline article? Like, I'm not trying to be an asshole. Like, I feel bad for Palestinian people, but Jesus Christ, this is unproductive. This video so far does absolutely nothing to provide a solution or to try to get to the point. Or to get to a point where like there can be some kind of a solution implemented that could, stop what's going on. It's not. It doesn't seem to be interested in that. It doesn't seem to be interested in doing that. So
modern records of Gaza City's urban development. Israel has left Gaza City's main public library in ruins. It has also damaged or destroyed countless bookshops, publishing houses, libraries, and hundreds of educational facilities. Israel has targeted every one of Gaza's 4 universities, including the Islamic University of Gaza, the oldest higher education institution in the territory, which has trained generations of doctors, engineers, amongst others, destroying campuses for the education of future generations of Palestinians in Gaza. Alongside many others, Israel has killed leading Palestinian academics, including Professor Soufiane Tayyah, the president of the Islamic University, an award-winning physicist and UNESCO chair of astronomy, astrophysics, and space sciences in Palestine, who died alongside his family in an airstrike. Dr. Ahmed Hamdi Abu Absa, dean of the software engineering department in the University of Palestine, reportedly shot dead by Israeli soldiers as he walked away, having been released from 3 days of enforced disappearance. Professor Mohammed Aid Shabir, professor of immunology and virology and former president of the Islamic University of Gaza, the airstrike on his home killed him, his wife, their daughter-in-law, and their eldest son. Those who survived the bombing and tried to walk to Al-Shifa Hospital nearby were shot dead by Israeli forces besieging the hospital. Professor Rifat Al-Arir, poet and professor of comparative literature and creative writing at the Islamic University of Gaza, Professor Al-Arir was a co-founder of We Are Not Numbers, a Palestinian youth project seeking to tell the stories behind otherwise impersonal accounts of Palestinians and Palestinian deaths in the news.
For more than 16 years, Al-Arir worked as a professor of English literature at the Islamic University of Gaza, where he taught Shakespeare and other subjects. Rifat Al-Arir was a father of 6 and a mentor to many young Palestinian writers and journalists. He authored dozens of stories and poems about life under Israeli occupation in Gaza.
Israel has damaged and destroyed numerous centers of Palestinian learning and culture, including the Al-Zafar Damari Mosque and Center for Manuscripts and Ancient Documents, the Orthodox Cultural Center, the Al-Qarara Cultural Museum, the Gaza Center for Culture and Arts, the Arab Social Cultural Center, the Hakawi Society for Culture and Arts, and the Rafah Museum, Gaza's newly opened museum of Palestinian heritage, housing hundreds of cultural and archaeological artifacts.
Is he like reading a Reddit post? Like
Facts. Israel's attacks have destroyed Gaza's ancient history. 8 sites have been damaged or destroyed, including the ancient port of Gaza, known as Anthedon Harbor or Al-Balakia, the archaeological site of a 2,000-year-old Roman cemetery listed on both the Islamic...
Like, I'm not trying to be rude, because all these things are terrible. And, like, again, that's why I think part of my solution is that Israel should provide reparations to Palestinian people after there's, you know, a conclusion has come to, an agreement on both sides that, you know, 2-state solution. But it just sounds like this is just info dumping as much as possible in here. Unproductive info dumping that doesn't have any consideration or encouragement of an actual solution. Like, it's terrible. This is a horrific war. Very complicated. If you say it's not complicated, you're a fucking idiot. And, like, I don't want you to follow me anymore. Incredibly complicated topic with an incredibly complicated history with, you know, millions of people on both sides, where there needs to be a solution that, you know, for both sides, a 2-state solution. You know? But okay, I'm just keep going.
Heritage List and tentative UNESCO World Heritage List. Israel has also destroyed Gaza City's old city, including its 146-year-old historic houses, mosques, churches, markets, and schools. It has also destroyed more recent history of more hopeful times, including the Rashad al-Shawa Cultural Center, site of the historic meeting between United States President Bill Clinton and Palestinian President Yasser Arafat 25 years ago, and an important cultural hub for Palestinians in Gaza with its theater, library, and event space. And Israel is destroying Gaza's future academic and cultural potential. Alongside the 352 Palestinian schools it has damaged or destroyed, the 4,037 students and 209 teachers and educational staff it has killed, alongside the other 7,259 students and 619...
What is that? You went to the comments and you saw his pinned comment? See through misleading media narratives about the conflict in Gaza, go to this thing and subscribe for 40% off their access to it. Yeah, no, it's a little interesting. Comes off as a little crass. Okay. But okay.
Teachers is injured. Israel has damaged or destroyed an estimated 318 Muslim and Christian religious sites, demolishing the places where Palestinians have worshipped for generations. These include the Great Omari Mosque, originally a 5th century Byzantine church, an iconic landmark of Gaza's history, architecture, and cultural heritage, and a place of worship by Christians and Muslims for over 1,000 years. Israeli shelling has also damaged the Church of St. Porphyrius, founded in 425 AD and believed to be the 3rd oldest church in the world, alongside 2 other churches that have sustained direct Israeli fire. Gaza's Christians themselves have been targeted and killed by Israel in the very church compound where they sought shelter. Many of these war crimes are being filmed by Israeli occupation forces and posted on social media for entertainment content.
This is a how-to video on how to blow up a mosque in Gaza. Format is internet fluent. The content is very...
Yeah, that's terrible. These people, these soldiers should be punished. Absolutely.
Very real. Filmed, edited, and posted on Instagram by an Israeli soldier. It's one of dozens...
And I'm sure that there are videos like this. I haven't seen any of these things because I'm not like, I don't want to see this kind of stuff. So it's not like my feed, you know what I mean? People will tend to get like this type of content. Like this is one of the problems. This is one of the media problems too. Is people will get the content that speaks to them the most. So if you're somebody who like is a big defender of Palestine, you're going to see a lot of like anti-Palestine messages because it riles you up. And that's like what you want to see. You want to be riled up whether you know it or not. So you're engaging with that more and more. You're seeing it more and more. I'm sure that there are people in Hamas bragging about this shit too. It's a fucked up war with both sides not liking each other and having very little value for each other's lives. It's just unfortunate that, again, Hamas has no value for their own people's lives.
Reviewed by CNN.
Friend of the show, Ugopinik, had a great video on this topic specifically. You should go watch that. Israel has killed and is killing Palestinian storytellers and poets, Palestinian farmers and fishermen, alongside Gaza's local legends. Pastry chef Masoud Muhammad al-Qahtadi killed in an Israeli airstrike on his house on the 3rd of November 2023, whose shop's motto, "Let the poor eat," and reputation for giving away the popular Palestinian treat kanafa to India.
I mean, you're trying to say that like they intentionally bombed this guy just to stop him from feeding people, or like he's a casualty of war, which is terrible. But some like that's the thing. I know it seems a little silly, or maybe pedantic, we'll say. But it sounds like you're trying to make it seem like they're intentionally targeting these sites to destroy these people when it seems like this is where Hamas is hiding. Maybe I'm wrong, but
indigent customers earned him the nickname Father of the Poor. 84-year-old Elham Farah from one of Palestine's oldest Christian families, a reputed accordionist and music teacher known as Mother
Hamas had a live Jewish death count. Yeah, I believe that.
Orange to generations of Palestinian music students for her shock of red hair, shot dead by an Israeli sniper outside the Holy Family Church in Gaza City when she returned home for warm clothes and was left to bleed to death. And Al-Shaima Saidam, the student with the highest final high school exam grades in the whole of Palestine, killed with multiple members of her family in a strike on Al-Nusrat refugee camp. Just as Israel is destroying the official memory and records of Palestinians in Gaza through its destruction of Gaza's archives and landmarks, it is obliterating Palestinian personal lives and private memories, histories, and futures through bombing and bulldozing graveyards, destroying family records and photographs, wiping out entire multi-generational families, and killing, maiming, and traumatizing a generation of children. As a Palestinian man in a video by UNRWA succinctly sums up, these are all our memories, our entire lives. Now it's all gone. Everything has turned to ashes. The Israeli army erecting the Israeli flag over the wreckage of devastated Palestinian homes, towns, and cities, including in Gaza City's Palestine Square itself, and spurred on by calls from within the Israeli government and without to flatten Gaza and re-establish Israeli settlements on the rubble of Palestinian homes, is destroying the very fabric and basis of
Didn't Hamas post a video of them sitting on a dead girl laughing? Yeah, like this is soldiers on both sides are like unfortunate pieces of shit. Like that's the unfortunate reality of the situation. This is what happens when you're fighting people. Like they don't see each other as human beings, or else they wouldn't be, operating the way that they are as easily. That's the fucked up part about this. Neither side has value for either side. That's why both sides are justifying like the heinous actions that they're both committing.
Palestinian life in Gaza. Israel is thereby deliberately inflicting on the Palestinian group in Gaza conditions of life calculated to bring about its destruction. Yeah, I don't have much else to add to that. The final point 8, is imposing measures intended to prevent Palestinian births. As set out above, Israel's actions are impacting Palestinian women and children in Gaza especially severely, with 70% of those killed estimated to be women and children. 2 mothers are estimated to be killed every hour in Gaza. Over 7,729 children were estimated to have been killed by December 11th alone, and at least 4,700 other women and children are reported missing, believed to be buried under the rubble. There are multiple eyewitness accounts of pregnant women being killed by Israeli soldiers, including while trying to access healthcare. Pregnant women and children, including newborn babies, are also particularly impacted by displacement, lack of access to food and water, shelter, clothes, hygiene, and sanitation, and lack of access to health services. These effects are severe and significant. An estimated 5,500 of approximately 52,000 pregnant Palestinian women in Gaza giving birth each month are doing so in unsafe conditions, often with no clean water, much less medical assistance, in shelters, in their homes, in the streets, amid rubble, or in overwhelmed healthcare facilities, where sanitation is worsening and the risk of infection and medical complications is on the rise. Where they are able to get a functioning hospital, pregnant women are having to undergo cesarean sections without anesthetic. Given the lack of access to critical medical supplies, including blood, doctors are being compelled to perform ordinarily unnecessary hysterectomies on young women in an attempt to save their lives, leaving them unable to have more children. The Minister of Health for the State of Palestine, Dr. May Al-Kaila, confirms that the only option facing Palestinian women in Gaza who bleed out after giving birth is to undergo a hysterectomy in order for their lives to be saved. Premature births have reportedly increased between 25 and 30% as stressed and traumatized pregnant women face a myriad of challenges, including being compelled to walk long distances in search of safety, attempting to escape from bombs, and being crowded into shelters in often squalid conditions. Particularly in northern Gaza, cases of placenta abruption, a serious condition that occurs to pregnant women during childbirth, which is potentially life-threatening to both mother and baby.
What is telling about this is that no one ever once said why they are doing this or how to start. Yeah, of course not. Well, this is the problem, is that when it comes to this topic, it's very riled up, and there tends to be a lot of energy on both sides. On his side of the aisle, if you have a nuanced take about this, then you're demonized as somebody who wants Palestinians dead, when it's just not the case. That's the reality. That's what's happening. So, of course, you're not encouraged to have like a nuanced take. In many of these instances, things get sensationalized and go out of control so fast. And that's why he hasn't all like that should have been the first thing. Like this started because of this, and that's not the point. The goal of this is not to have the right conversation or try to have the right conversation. It's the whole entire point of this is to say, like, not to be inflammatory, but Jews are bad. Everything Israel's doing is bad. They have no right to do anything that they're doing. They're not no right to defend themselves. That's the point of this video as a virtue signal. Like, no, it doesn't care either way. It's just like that's what the video is. It's like, hey, this is what that's all it is. That's what it boils down to. It's an unfortunate thing, but we're 2/3 of the way into this video, and not once has he proposed like a solution, which should have been the first thing. Because I think that trying to show the solution is what's going to show your intentionality. Especially since most people aren't even going to make it this far into the video. All right.
Have more than doubled. An ever-increasing number of Palestinian babies in Gaza are reportedly dying from entirely preventable causes brought about by Israel's actions. Newborns up to 3 months old are dying of diarrhea, hypothermia, and other preventable diseases without essential equipment and medical support. Premature and underweight babies have little to no chance of survival. Palestinian newborn babies have died due to the lack of fuel to supply hospital generators. Others have been found decomposing in their hospital cots, medical staff taking care of them having been forced by Israel to evacuate. On November 3rd, the World Health Organization warned that maternal deaths are expected to increase given the lack of access to adequate care, with deadly consequences on reproductive health, including a rise in stress-induced miscarriages, stillbirths, and premature births. The reproductive violence inflicted by Israel on Palestinian women, newborn babies, infants, and children could be qualified as acts of genocide under Article 2 of the Convention of Prevention of Genocide, including imposing measures intended to prevent births within a group. She stressed that states must prevent and punish such acts in accordance with their responsibilities under the Genocide Convention. So if after hearing all of that you still don't think there's any evidence of Israel conducting a genocide, I just want to ask how? How and why? I mean,
because it's a war on both sides, and either like both sides are like unrelenting. Like that's why it's a war. You wouldn't really consider it a genocide. I wouldn't consider it a genocide. It's a war on both sides. Again, you have Israel was attacked. Now they're trying to eradicate Hamas, and Hamas is hiding amongst people through like underground tunnels and putting their military infrastructure in apartment buildings and hospitals, et cetera, and they don't want their people to evacuate because then they get to say like, oh look, they killed some of our people. That's the unfortunate reality of what's happening here. So again, do I think that they're ever going to be able to eradicate Hamas? I don't know. At the end of the day, whether we like it or not, the Hamas is probably going to still exist. Hamas probably still has to exist. Hamas isn't going to be eradicated, but Hamas needs to come to the table and needs to be forced to the table by their allies, and Israel has to be forced to the table by their allies, which is us as well, and come to some kind of a conclusion. That's what has to happen. That's what like has to happen. There has to be like some kind of a forceful mediation, and like you would hope after a good period of time that the wounds would hopefully heal, and both of these countries, or should be countries because it would be a two-state solution at that point, would be able to come to like a more productive place. That's all you could really hope for.
This tweet did say intentional, maybe all this stuff was on accident. Wait a minute, hold on, there's another section here. Expressions of genocidal intent against the Palestinian people by Israeli state officials and others. Evidence of Israeli state officials' specific intent to commit and persist in committing genocidal acts or to fail to prevent them has been significant and overt since October 2023. Those statements of intent, when combined with the level of killing, maiming, displacement, and destruction on the ground, together with the siege, evidence an unfolding and continuing genocide. This part of the document contains statements from basically every single person that works for the Israeli government that are genocidal in nature, if not overtly genocidal.
Yeah, and I imagine they exist, absolutely. And the same things are going to exist from Hamas as well. I mean, I watched like Jon Stewart last night. Both the leaders of Israel and Hamas, neither of them are really that interested in anything productive right now. It's a horrific. It's just unfortunate. Both sides want the other side dead. It's just like an unfortunate, terrible situation.
Benjamin Netanyahu, Israel's prime minister, notoriously described their military campaign as a struggle between the children of light and the children of darkness, between humanity.
Like, how come are you going to show when like Hamas leaders are like, no, we want like all the Jews wiped out of the area? Like, are you going to show that? Or does that not fit whatever narrative that you're trying to push?
And the law of the jungle. Later on, in a letter to Israeli soldiers that was also posted on Twitter, Netanyahu said that this is the war between the sons of light and the sons of darkness. We will not let up on our mission until the light overcomes the darkness. The good will defeat the extreme evil that threatens us and the entire world. Later, we're facing monsters who murdered children in front of their parents. This is a battle not only of Israel against these barbarians, it's a battle of civilization against barbarism. In late October, Israeli forces were preparing their land invasion of Gaza, and the prime minister invoked the biblical story of the total destruction of Amalek by the Israelites, stating, "You must remember what Amalek has done to you," says our holy Bible, and we do remember. The prime minister referred again to Amalek in the letter sent on the 3rd of November to Israeli soldiers and officers. The relevant biblical passage reads as follows: "Now go, attack Amalek, and prescribe all that belongs to him. Spare no one, but kill alike men and women, infants and sucklings, oxen and sheep, camels and asses." I wonder what that means. What could that mean? Israel's president, Isaac Herzog, it's an entire nation out there that is responsible. It's not true, this rhetoric about civilians not aware, not involved. It's absolutely not true, and we will fight until we break their backbone. He's also one of the many Israelis who have handwritten messages on bombs to be dropped on Gaza. The minister of defense said that they were imposing a complete siege on Gaza. No electricity, no food, no water, no fuel. Everything's closed. We are fighting human animals, and we're acting accordingly. He also informed troops on the border that he had released all the restraints, saying that Gaza won't return to what it was before. We will eliminate everything. If it doesn't take one day, it will take a week. It will take weeks or even months. We will reach all places. He further announced that Israel was moving to a full-scale response and that he had removed every restriction on Israeli forces. When we say that Hamas should be destroyed, it also means those who celebrate, those who support, and those who hand out candy, they're all terrorists and they should also be destroyed. That was the Israeli Minister for National Security. All the civilian population in Gaza is ordered to leave immediately. We will win. They will not receive a drop of water or a single battery until they leave the world. No electrical switch will be turned on, no water hydrant will be opened, and no fuel truck will enter until the Israeli abductees are returned home. Humanitarianism for humanitarianism, and no one will preach us morality. This is the continued logic to justify war crimes, right? Taking civilian hostages is a war crime. Does that mean you can do war crimes to undo that? No. That's literally that. No, you can't. And what's being described there is a war crime, and they're doing it.
Hold on, what was that?
That no fuel truck will enter until the Israeli abductees are returned home. Humanitarianism for humanitarianism, and no one will preach us morality. This is the continued logic to justify war crimes, right?
Yeah, both sides are taking hostages.
Taking civilian hostages is a war crime. Does that mean you can do war crimes to undo that? No.
So what I just heard here was, hey, Hamas are taking civilians as hostages. I know that's a war crime, but is it justifiable to commit war crimes back? Yes. Sorry. If one side is going to commit some kind of a war crime, the other side's going to respond in kind. Is it ideal? Of course not. But like, this is where we're at. We have two sides that hate each other and are killing each other. And what does Noah want to do? He's not no interest in that stopping. Of course not. Because that doesn't make for a flashy video saying like, hey guys, we need to try to come to a conclusion, right? That doesn't help. This is just like a jerk off piece for. This is just a jerk off piece. Like that's all it is. This is just like a I don't like Destiny piece. That's all it comes down to.
That's literally that. No, you can't. And what's being described there is a war crime, and they're doing it. They're doing that, and it's a war crime. We need to deal a blow that hasn't been seen in 50 years and take down Gaza. That was the Israeli Minister of Finance. The north of the Gaza Strip, more beautiful than ever. Everything is blown up and flattened, simply a pleasure for the eyes. We must talk about the day after. In my mind, we will hand over lots to all those who fought for Gaza over the years, and to those evicted from Gush Katif, which is a former Israeli settlement. He later argued against humanitarian aid. We wouldn't hand the Nazis humanitarian aid, and there's no such thing as uninvolved civilians in Gaza. He also posited a new.
I mean, they are giving them humanitarian aid, but like, yeah, no, these are all disgusting. Like, I'm not going to contest that because my point of my video, my point of my commentary isn't to be like, yeah, Israel's completely within the right. Of course not. But like, that's what his point is about Hamas. Like, he's running hard defense for a fucking terrorist organization that would kill him if he was there. Like, no offense, but like, you know, it's fucking insane. Now you good, thank you so much for the $5. I lean left because people like Noah make me think, man, these racist conservatives make some good points. Okay. Sometimes, man. Sometimes.
Nuclear attack on the Gaza Strip. The Israeli Minister of Agriculture invoked the Nakba, said they were doing it again for Gaza. We all have one common goal: erasing the Gaza Strip from the face of the earth. That was the Deputy Speaker of the Knesset and member of the Foreign Affairs and Security Committee. It's not just politicians, though. Of course, it's also military officials. Hamas became ISIS, and the citizens of Gaza are celebrating instead of being horrified. Human animals are dealt with accordingly. Israel has imposed a total blockade on.
I mean, there's a level of truth to that. Hamas became ISIS. Hamas is a terrorist organization. I guess.
Gaza, no electricity, no water, just damage. You wanted hell, you will get hell. That was the Israeli Army coordinator of government activities in the territories. We cut the supply of energy, water, and diesel to the Strip, but it's not enough. In order to make the siege effective, we have to prevent others from giving assistance to Gaza. The people should be told that they have two choices: to stay and to starve, or to leave. If Egypt and other countries prefer that these people will perish in Gaza, this is their choice. When you are at war with...
So that's referencing the fact that like no surrounding country will provide aid or anything to, or excuse me, will provide what's the word I'm looking for? Jesus Christ. They're not taking any refugees in. And again, a big reason for that is because if they do take refugees in, a lot of times those refugees end up destroying like parts of their country, because they'll take resources and then they'll bring it back to try to like fuel like the Hamas war engine, we'll call it. Like just give Hamas more resources, and like unfortunately that's why they're not taking them in. You know, but like acknowledging that it's terrible, but like that doesn't fit like Noah's narrative of like, oh yeah, they're called like, unfortunately these terrorists, Hamas terrorists, we'll call them militants if it makes you feel better, when they do get access to other countries, they're going in there and they're stealing resources and they're causing like riots and havoc and like destroying parts of the country. It's a fucked up scenario. The whole thing is fucked up.
With another country, you don't feed them, you don't provide them with electricity or gas or water or anything else. A country can be attacked in a much broader way to bring the country to the brink of dysfunction. This is the necessary outcome of events in Gaza. Israel has no interest in the Gaza Strip being rehabilitated, and this is an important point that needs to be made clear.
Yeah, probably asylum is what I was looking for.
To the Americans. If we ever want to see the hostages alive, the only way is to create a severe humanitarian crisis in Gaza. He called for the destructions of water treatment plants, much like President...
Yeah, it sounds like he's talking about a response to getting his hostages, like his own people back. Like you would honestly expect a country to have a higher value for their people than other countries' people. That's kind of the point, no? I mean, you don't see that with Hamas, but that's kind of the point, right?
Herzog, this guy has repeatedly underscored that there should be no distinction between Hamas combatants and Palestinian civilians. Who are the poor women of Gaza? They are all the mothers, sisters, or wives of Hamas murderers. On the one hand, they are part of the infrastructure that supports the organization. On the other hand, if they experience a humanitarian disaster, then it can be assumed that some of the Hamas fighters and the more junior commanders will begin to understand that the war is futile. These kind of statements are, not only evil and genocidal, but they're also just wrong. Hamas is not going to be eliminated. That's just not going to happen. That's not how this works. It's been 4 straight months of relentless bombardment in northern Gaza.
Why? Why do you think that?
Israel claimed that Hamas had been dismantled there and pulled troops, but they have continually resurfaced. The last thing I want to read...
Yeah, well, yeah, of course. And part of the reason that Hamas is going to continuously resurface is the fact that, like, people still have a high support for Hamas. And that's an unfortunate reality. Like, the way that things are happening is not the right way for this to go. Like, I know it's a hot take, right? But again, like, both sides need to come to the conclusion. I mean, there's really nothing that can be done, unfortunately.
Here's a quote-unquote motivational speech that an Israeli army reservist made that's just, I don't know, it's just fucking sickening. Be triumphant and finish them off and don't leave anyone behind.
Question, why do you think that they aren't purposely targeting the guy making and passing out food to people? Honest question, why so much benefit of the doubt for Israel? So just to be clear, I was questioning the intent of saying that. I don't know that they are. It sounds more like they're bombing particular targets and people are not allowed to leave. Like Hamas is not allowing people to leave or evacuate. But is it possible? Like I've said it multiple times, like Israel, like yeah, both people on both sides, like both both sides, Palestine, Israel, these people don't see each other as human. So like, yeah, I wouldn't doubt that it's happening. It's a horrible atrocity. Both sides are fucking murdering each other and they don't care about each other. That's why there needs to be some kind of like intervention.
Erase the memory of them. Erase them, their families, mothers, and children. These animals can no longer live. Every Jew with a weapon should go out and kill them. If you have an Arab neighbor, don't wait. Go to his home and shoot him. We want to invade, not like before. We want to enter and destroy what's in front of us and destroy houses, then destroy the one after it. With all of our forces, complete destruction, enter and destroy. As you can see, we will witness things we've never dreamed of. Let them drop bombs on them and erase them. This guy was called up by the army to give motivational speeches. This was broadcast on social media. It's just incomprehensible that it's just that mask off, It actually really isn't, though, when you understand how Israeli soldiers and settlers talk about Palestinians and the sorts of evils they've afflicted upon them.
Just to be clear, there's like 2 million Palestinians living in Israel. And like I bring that up because the whole, so far the energy of this video is like Israel like wants to see all Palestinians and they hate them all. But the reality is that there are Palestinians that are not living in Gaza that like live amongst Israel. They can vote. Some of them are in government. They're in sports. Are they treated exactly the same? Probably not. Probably closer to how we treat black people in America. But like how many Israelis live in Gaza? None, right? It's just something to keep in mind as we get so inflammatory in these narratives.
Them in the past and will continue to do so in the future.
ורדפו אחרי חבר'ה ושרפו אותם. זה היה משהו זוועתי, וזה אסור לספר, אני לא אדבר על זה, כי זה יכול להיות סקנדל שלם מהעניין הזה. 3-4 חודשים הראשונים הייתי רוצח.
מה זה אומר?
אני לא לקחתי שבויים. בזמן קרב, אם מישהו הרים ידיים, משהו כזה. לא לקחתי שבויים. אם היה עומדת כיתה של זה עם ידיים למעלה, אז באותו יום הייתי רואה אותי, הייתי קוצר את כולם, עד כדי כך.
כמה אתה חושב אנשים הרגת ככה?
לא ספרתי. אני לא יכול לדעת בחיי. היה לי מקלע עם 250 כדורים. ותראה, יריתי, נלחמתי כולם. אני לא יכול לספור.
This list goes on and on and on, and I hope by now at least some of you are able to look at this and say, you know, maybe there's some evidence in there. I don't know what better evidence you can have of genocidal intent than looking into the camera and saying, I want to do a genocide, we want to do a genocide, we want to kill everybody, we want to do it right now as soon as we can, and then immediately taking actions over and over and over again that are meant to achieve that goal. How much fucking clearer does it get, man? We're going to return now to a few more of Destiny's tweets because, you know, that's the point of this video, to look at an influencer's tweets and call him dumb, not use drama farming as a Trojan horse to read the ICJ application that lays out a pretty compelling case that Israel's committing genocide. That's not the point.
Are you gonna give us your take on how this conflict stops, or is this just more... Or are you just like morally masturbating right now? Because that's what it seems like, you're just morally masturbating, but okay.
This video, we're here to farm. Omar Badar is another person who responded to that initial tweet from Destiny. He wrote, your obsession with litigating the applicability of the word genocide here without adequate legal background is getting in the way of a bigger point. Genocide or not, there is no dispute that Israel is committing horrific war crimes in its deliberate war on Palestinian civilians. Destiny responds.
Yeah. And same on the opposite side. That's why this whole situation is so fucked up.
Responded writing, I mean, it's possible that the IDF is, but the other side is committing a fuck ton of war crimes for sure. It's possible. It's possible. Aside from...
Okay, so do you want to acknowledge that they are committing war crimes? Yeah, he should have said, yes, they're committing war crimes, and so is the other side.
From the fucking CEO of the Israeli...
But he just glossed right over there. Both sides are committing war crimes. I don't understand.
War Crimes Institute for Defending War Crimes College. Destiny is the only guy casting doubt on the assertion that Israel is committing war crimes. They're on video.
I don't think he is, but...
When it comes to Hamas's war crimes, it's for sure.
Wait, no, he... Okay.
Sure, he's very sure about that.
Okay, what about for you? Do you think Hamas is committing... Like, yeah, okay, misspeak from Destiny, shitty, you know, eat your balls, Destiny, who cares? Right? Like, eat shit, like, he's wrong. Both sides are committing war crimes. I've seen him say it. That's why, like, I'm not, you know, super chimed into this fucking tweet from 20 days ago, because I just saw him have a conversation with Piers Morgan where he's like, you know, both sides are committing war crimes. I'm regularly engaged with it. So do you think Hamas is committing war crimes? Like, just tell us. Give us one criticism of Hamas. Like, it's so obvious, where at least when Destiny talks about it, he'll talk about it in a way of like he criticizes both sides. Like, I don't understand. Like, where's your... what the fuck?
When it comes to Israel.
But okay.
Maybe. I don't know. Who's to say?
What do you think?
The other absurd part about this tweet is him saying that no one cares about holding Hamas responsible. My brother in Christ...
No one cares. You haven't held Hamas responsible. This is 40 minutes in. You haven't said a single negative thing about Hamas.
What do you think Israel thinks it's doing? Literally the only reason this genocide is still going on.
His point is that Israel's the only one doing it, and nobody else really seems to be caring about that. What do you think?
It's because Israel is saying that they are, quote unquote, large quotes, holding Hamas responsible. Also, you know, the United States, virtually every Western media apparatus, that's why every major...
Every Western country is criticizing Israel. What are you talking about? Like, I think like the United States was like one of the only people, or like to be like, hey, we need to like let Israel fight, like defend itself. Like, what are you talking about?
Interview has to start off with 12 minutes of the host telling the guest to condemn Hamas, condemn Hamas, condemn Hamas. Come on, do you condemn Hamas? Another person responded to that tweet writing, since when does death toll in an active war not count? Destiny replied saying, question mark, going to war is not genocide. People die in war, that doesn't make it genocide. Civilians die in war, that doesn't make it genocide. Even if you commit war crimes and target civilians, that's not genocide. So here's just
okay, that sounds about right.
Sort of milking the one thing he's been technically correct on, which is that death tolls alone are not the same thing as genocide. They're not, but...
Well, there you go. So you admit that he's right.
Also, no qualified commentator in this discussion is saying that. I personally don't consider a random 700-follower Twitter user to be a qualified commentator, but that's just me personally, I guess. He likes
you just said he's technically right, so like, what's your issue?
Do this thing. He does a few other tweets. Somebody wrote, paraphrasing him, if you commit war crimes and target civilians, that's not genocide. Lamau. He responded writing, how fucking stupid are people? Hey, come on, man. Relax. Jesus. Yes, why would you think you're making a point here? What do you even think genocide is? Just killing civilians? Once again, the original statement taken on its own as a tweet is technically incorrect. You know, war crimes and civilian targeting usually are a part of genocide.
Right, but since it's in part of a war that they're having, it wouldn't be considered a genocide. That's his point. You know, if you think he's wrong about that, fine. I'm still waiting for you to criticize Hamas at all for letting their own people die, having no value for their own people's lives. You know, also maybe because they hate LGBTQ people and want them dead and have an incredibly oppressive society for women. Those are things that I value as well. I mean, we never really talk about that, but I feel like that should be a factor. But okay, like, hey, fuck it, right?
Actually, using the term requires other factors. But also, he here took an incomplete version of this person's argument. A minute after that first tweet, they replied to their own tweet writing, there's actually a wealth of evidence that Israeli forces are committing genocide. All of it was used and quoted in the ICJ. The war crimes and civilian targeting in the original tweet are clearly referencing a specific application which does display genocide. He didn't respond to that original tweet, and you can see why, right? The tweet makes his big epic dunk a moot point. Here you might say, well, no, he maybe just didn't see that second tweet. And it's like, maybe, but also, you know, it was tweeted a minute after. And the first thing you see when you click on a tweet is replies from the original author. I think the more likely explanation is just that it's it's easier to pick incomplete criticism to dunk on. It's just you want to win. You win that point. You win that point in response.
I guess.
Congratulations, but you won in the most annoying and inconsequential way possible. One wonders how.
Why didn't he just make it all part of the one tweet instead of just making a second part of that? But this is okay.
How someone like this ends.
This is why Twitter is unproductive.
Up getting divorced very publicly and then making hours and hours of content talking about his ex-wife. I mean, this.
Okay. Cool.
It's just,
yeah, sure. It is weird that he did do that. Sure.
Normal stuff, cool stuff. Another response to that first tweet was someone saying, if Nazi Germany wanted to genocide all the Jews, then they would only exist in the history books, Destiny circa 1943. And he's just quoting the logic back. We did that earlier, you know? How does Destiny respond to this? Well, he does it by doing a sneaky little switcheroo. The Jewish population still hasn't recovered from the Holocaust, a genocide lasting a few years that's some 80 years old. Israel has been continually genociding Palestinians for decades, and yet their population continues to grow every single day.
I mean, I think it's a reasonable point. If they wanted to genocide them, then like, why has their population grown exponentially in Gaza? Again, doesn't mean Israel isn't committing, like, doing horrible things. So is Hamas. But it's like your idea of like a genocide. You think if it was a productive genocide, they would have probably done more. And again, Israel has enough power to like destroy Gaza very instantaneously. Just to be clear, like that's the point of the other like insensitive tweet of like if they wanted to genocide them, they would have by now or whatever. I'm paraphrasing.
First tweet stipulated total annihilation, remember? That was the definition he used. But when someone responds doing the same thing, he does a switcheroo. He backpedals from a population that only exists in the history books to a population that has not recovered in growth. That's not
what the fuck are you talking about?
Which is a switcheroo. He backpedals from a population that only exists in the history books.
Yeah, again, he's saying that Israel has the power to like eliminate the entirety of Gaza and Palestinians if they wanted to, and they haven't, which is why their population has gone up over the years, like in the past decade or so.
To a population.
And here he's saying the Jewish population has never actually recovered from the Holocaust since that happened. I don't like. Every day I get it when people make fun of video essayists. Why don't you just go? Does he talk to Destiny about this? Because there's no way he would get fucking. There's no way, man. Like this is insane. This is wild. What are you talking about?
That has not recovered in growth. That's not what you said, bro. Normal stuff, cool stuff. In the future, when the dust settles about what's going on right now, what's happening to Palestinians, insofar as it needs to settle, I think anyone paying attention, there's no dust. I do wonder what guys like this will be up to, you know? Like his grandkid, Beyonce Jr., comes up to him at the cabin, sits up on his knee and says, hey, pup, where were you during the Palestinian genocide? And he'll be like, well, kiddo, I was in my gamer chair, trying to convince everybody that it wasn't happening. And then Beyonce Jr.
Well, that's not... Again, dislike Destiny if you want, but this dude is constantly talking, like, he's constantly talking about how there needs to be a two-state solution. This idea that Destiny is just going around saying it wasn't a genocide and that's his entire point is like just dumb. This guy's such a fucking baby. Holy fuck.
Junior will say, why'd you do that? What the fuck, man?
And it's also funny that based on this video, I guess he's okay with Israeli people getting murdered by Hamas and getting war crimed because he hasn't said any negative thing about it. So cool beans, man. Good job.
He'll say, because I didn't want to be wrong. So also it helped me pull 20 million views a month. So there's that. It'll be fine though. You know, big fan base, following the pathway of warmongering liberalism. Every lib journalist that...
Not really, man. I mean, again, it's kind of hard to warmonger when you keep saying that you need a two-state solution where Israel loses out on like fucking land and has to give things up and alluding at reparations to Palestinian people. I don't understand. What are you talking about? Like his take on Israel Palestine is the same as like Jon Stewart's take. It's just that Destiny is incredibly edgy, so people like will misinterpret him, and I understand that. But Noah's like, I feel like this was very intentional. The reason I feel like this entire video is very intentional, like a hit piece, is specifically because there was zero condemning of Hamas at all, zero acknowledgement that they're not letting their people leave areas after there's evacuations. It just seems like he was desperate to get a dunk. So I mean, yeah, man, I think that's cool. You know, good for you, I guess.
That foamed at the mouth to invade Iraq. They're like tenured professors and they work at the Washington Post and write op-eds for that War Crime College Institute place we talked about earlier. No, I'm not coming on your stream. I don't want to get destroyed in the marketplace of ideas. But also that's probably a good thing. The last guy I debated live on stream ended up having animated child porn on his computer. I don't think anyone wants to be exposed for that. So lose the battle, win the war, so they say. Anyway.
Yeah, but you got, my understanding, you got dumpstered by Vosh. So I think the reason you don't have conversations with people is because you're a fucking idiot. Doesn't not have conversations. It's fine. Do your thing. But hey, man, good for you, brother. Good for you. We're just going to wait for the next couple of months for you to get like dumpstered for some other point and you like embarrassed and take like a fucking break again, I guess.
See you guys. Have a good one. Bye.